Hi there, I'm Austin Church. I'm really excited today to have a conversation with my friend and co conspirator, Joey Gilkey. The reason I reached out to Joey, who's here, give us a wink.
Hey.
Hey, uh, the reason I reached out to Joey is he's one of the best sales guys I know. And I thought he would have something to say about that part of the sales process we call follow up.
Mm.
It's easy for it to become monotonous. I won't steal any thunder from our conversation. Joey, I know all about you. Tell everybody else.
All right, I'll give it a go. Thanks for having me on. Joey Gilkey. I am a thoroughbred salesperson. That's the sales language coming out of me, anyways. Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Sales Driven Agency. I came into agency world, digital marketing agencies, freelancers, consulting. Different path than a typical agency owner might have. Like a lot of you who are listening, probably creative, strategists, technicians of some sort. I came into this world a la sales as a VP of sales at an agency to then getting into the actual running of agencies or agency style businesses. But my path was via sales instead of being able to do the marketing or creative. So, what I do with Sales Driven Agency is I help agencies get sales right. Oftentimes, because of your background as a creative or strategist technician, you are not a salesperson. So therefore, how do you know how to run sales processes or hire salespeople or build out sales technology or know where to spend your time, how much money you should be putting into this or that? You shouldn't know that. And similarly, I'm not a creative. So that's why we work super well together. But that's what Sales Driven Agency does is we help people get sales right.
I mean, it makes sense. Your craft, so to speak, is sales.
Yeah, I mean that is the axe or the sword that I tend to sharpen. I'm not good at everything by any means. I'm actually not good at much. I'm good at sales. That's my thing, and transferring sales to people who are not good at sales.
Which some people who are really good at sales are not necessarily good with the transfer.
That's right.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, you mentioned, hey, I'm good at this. This has been my pursuit for many years. Talk about some specific strategies to get the first call or first appointment, which is, it goes without saying that that is important.
Most difficult part, usually. I
Yeah.
would say sales is won and lost in follow up. However, follow up doesn't matter if you don't have that first time appointment that you know how to generate. So, um, I think it really comes down to two things. One is inbound. Do you have authority and brand to where people are coming to you? Right. That's the easiest, slowest hanging fruit, warmest leads. But oftentimes, in order to build an actual sustainable business that's predictable, you can't just wait on people to come to you. And so we have to develop some sort
Right.
of outbound sales, which is just a scary phrase or term for a lot of people.
Mm.
It's really not. Sales is a very simple construct. The way I think about it is sales is a transaction between two people based in trust. That's it. Trust that goes bi-directionally. I trust that if you pay me, then I'm going to go, or you trust that if you pay me, I'm going to solve your problem. I trust that if I solve your problem, I'm going to get paid, right? It's very transaction based, but there has to be bi-directional trust there. And so I think people get so scared about sales is all you really have to do when you think about sales is how do I build trust with my ideal customer, which leads me to the
Hmm.
next point. It's difficult to create authority to get the yes in a sales process or a sales outreach if you don't know who you serve. At
Mm.
the end of the day, it comes down to because listen, agencies, freelancers, we're all a dime a dozen if we think about it. There is one around every corner in every city. Uh, if you don't have anything that differentiates you from the market, then you will not be any different than the rest of the market. And to be honest, the rest of the market sucks at sales. Let's be honest.
Hmm.
And so you have to first and foremost understand how it is that you're going to differentiate yourself from the market. Oftentimes that comes with declaring who it is that you serve and being very, very bold about who it is that we serve. We say no to everything else, at least in our marketing. And we say yes to this specific type of persona or company or industry or what have you. So I think that's the biggest thing is before we get into tactical things or strategies, if you don't have a clear understanding of who it is that is your ideal buyer, the person that which you solve the problem for the best, um, sales tactics and strategies don't work super well. That's where I'd start.
I think that's, I mean, what other place could you start? I suppose there are a bunch,
Yeah.
but they're going to be frustrating. I want to connect some of the dots. You mentioned the word authority. You mentioned the word,
Brand.
specialization or this niche that you're going after. You mentioned having a deep understanding of the problem or problems that people in that niche have.
Yep.
And you mentioned differentiation. And so I think, yeah, people are going to end up frustrated and perhaps empty handed if they don't have differentiation, authority, deep understanding of the problem, clear understanding of niche and target audience. Because without those four, how could you build trust quickly?
Yep. Right. I think that's, you can choose all the strategies and tactics you want. We could talk about cold email and social selling on LinkedIn and cold call and direct mail. But if it's not speaking to the audience specifically, and a mentor of mine always used to say, like, your copy or your sales messaging and language should reflect what would be equivalent to what's probably in their diary or journal if they kept one.
Mm.
You should be a fly on their boardroom. They should feel like, are you listening to my boardroom? Like, were you in our meeting? Right? If that isn't coming across in your language, you're probably not specialized. And so that's the biggest thing is all you're really doing is taking that language and that messaging and you're changing the mediums or the channels on which you're trying to get that messaging in front of them. That's all sales really is. And you're doing that to build trust so that you can transact.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, which is if I have a problem and it's painful and I'm experiencing that pain on a day-to-day basis, it's a kind of, refrain in my mind. Oh, even something with agency owners like, gosh, we need to get better at sales. We need to be filling our pipeline with leads. And then you come along and you're like, do you have any pains around sales? Is your pipeline not full of leads? And if you're echoing what they're hearing in their own minds already, if you're
Right.
mirroring that, well, yeah, it seems like it would be a whole lot easier to get that first appointment and start building trust.
100%. Because at the end of the day, everyone's vying for your customer's attention in one way, shape, or form. And it's not just even marketing, right? So you're competing against accounting companies. You're competing against HR companies. You're competing against software companies. Everyone wants your client's attention. You just happen to want their attention as it relates to marketing for the most part. And that's a big, if you can't stand out in this sea of what we call it the red ocean, right? If you're in a red ocean, there's blood in the water, everybody's competing, you're a commodity, which means you probably have to compete on things that you don't want to compete on, like price.
Right.
If you want to compete on price, then it's a race to the bottom. Instead, a value prop has two effects. One is it's going to drive the right types of clients into your pipeline, whether it be through outbound or inbound, and you're going to be able to charge what you're worth. And then some, probably, because you've built that trust and that authority, and they know that, oh, you're not in a red ocean like everybody else. You have this differentiating factor that puts you in a blue ocean.
Right. And I think you bring up another good point, which is it's a whole lot easier to charge more if you're differentiated.
Yes.
And we could talk about differentiation a long time. I want to shift gears a little bit. Assuming that you've got differentiation dialed in, unique selling proposition or value proposition, or your no competition positioning statement, as you like to say.
That's right.
That's dialed in. You've got a good understanding of your target audience, their problems. What is your process, and what tools help you manage that process? Because, like you said, it's going to come down to outbound. You can't just sit on your hands and wait for people to show up.
And be building inbound while you're executing on outbound, right? Like you want to have a good balance of both, because it's lead diversity, right? You want to have lead diversity because you don't want to be dependent on any one channel to grow your business, because if that channel gets shut down for whatever reason, then you're screwed, right? And so I want to make that differentiator. But yeah, from a process perspective, I'm going to give a very practical, where I think if a lot of you aren't already doing sales very consistently, I'm going to give you a practice that you should consider. And before I get into that, what I think is important is when you dial in who you serve, right? Understand the demographics of who they are, right? So the industry they're in, the titles and positions of the people that make the decisions, employee size, revenue size, location. That's all demographics. The other part that you should do your research on, and that might mean having to call and talk to 10 people in the industry to understand, the phone, right?
Oh no.
I have a strategy around that. If we get time, we could talk about it. But the other part is the psychographics. So what are the things that, what are the goals that this person has? What does their day-to-day look like, right? Like, what are they doing from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. in their job? If it's a CMO, what does their job look like? Who do they manage? What projects do they work on? What are the headaches that probably come from that? What are their pain points? What are their goals? What content do they consume? What channels do they spend time on? If it's social, if it's email, if it's phone, if it's direct mail, like whatever psychographic information you can understand about them, that can be leveraged and used in your sales process. Now, as it relates to sales process, I think I'm going to actually give you homework if you're listening and you're actually up for the challenge. Very simple. Once you have defined this profile, say you have it down, you have your differentiating value prop or whatever you want to call it. I want you to build a list of 50 people that reflect in some way, shape, or form, or closely reflect that ideal person or company. Build a list of 50. That's all I want you to do. Not a massive list, just a list of 50. I want you to do research on the 50, and I want you to get their contact information, understand where these people are spending time online, right, or even offline, and build a list of 50. Because what we're going to do next with the list of 50 is what we call our power hour. So if you're not doing sales, one of the more powerful things you can do is commit to 1 hour per day. We call this the power hour, where you are committing to between 5 and 10 high value touch points with that list, right? So that might mean Mondays I work on this batch of 5 or 10. Tuesdays I work on this batch 5 or 10. Wednesdays, boom. Next week, recycle it. Do another high touch point. So what are the touch points? Well, again, you have to be armed with your information and the research, right? This is a much more research heavy way of doing things. And I like it this way because you can do little research and take a list of 1,000 people, drop them into an email sequence with an email sequencing tool and hit go. Doesn't take a whole lot of research. You just have to have their name, their company, their email address. You drop them in there. And you might get a 0.5% conversion into a meeting from that. So if you go after 1,000 people, you might get 5 meetings, right? That's not the game I want to play. I'd rather go after 50 people and get 15 meetings, right? And so the only way you're going to be able to do that is by thoughtful, methodical, high-value touch points. So that's the next part, touch points. What channels are your people spending time on? Is it LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram for social? Is it email? Well, it's going to cut through their email inbox. They're getting thousands of emails. Well, maybe you need to send an email that has a little bit of a flavor to it. Maybe you send a video in an email instead of a text email. Maybe you inject humor with like a GIF or some sort of meme or image into the email. The next channel is phone, right? Sometimes picking up the phone, SMS, MMS, phone calls, voicemails. Mm-hmm. That's an avenue. And then there's direct mail, flat mail, lumpy mail, novelty mail, like gag gifts, giftology, where it's like really thoughtful gifts that are specific to them, things that cut through the noise. All of those are areas in which you can create campaigns around. But as it relates to power hour is you just got to know where they're at, where they're spending time. The easiest, lowest hanging fruit is typically, if you're in B2B, LinkedIn and email. Figure out how to master those two and push forward.
I love the simplicity of it. I mean, I asked about tools and process, and I like
which I can get to.
Well, you kind of already did, right? And you and I have talked before about sometimes finding a new tool and setting it up is a diversion. Mm-hmm. You're not really doing the work, and the work is quite manageable and quite simple. Where are people showing up online already? Meet them there. You're going to have to show up multiple times and like show up in perhaps multiple different ways before you get the first appointment.
That's right.
And my guess is most of us give up before we had a reasonable chance of success at this type of outbound sales campaign.
Yes. Oftentimes we give up. That's why I call it the power hours. You just got to commit 1 hour per day until you get traction, until you can document it, until you can delegate it, right? So do, document, delegate. It's my 3Ds. Do the power hour until you know that it works, right? And figure it out and commit to just that hour, right? You're committing to 20 hours a month, essentially. And so all I want you to do is commit in that time to make 5 to 10 high quality touch points 1 hour per day. That means do some research in that time, make a touch point. Do some research, make a touch point.
Mm-hmm.
And the tools that I use, I think, to manage that, obviously a CRM is super important, right? You use Pipedrive. I used to be a Pipedrive shop. We're now on HubSpot. CRMs all have very similar features these days. They're all pretty feature heavy. The main thing is you want to be able to manage contacts, manage what you have done with those contacts, measure what has worked or has not worked, and be able to create a process within that tool so that you can maintain. I call it the stacking methodology, is a methodology I created. I have a guide on it floating somewhere on the internet, but it's my methodology for just staying on top of contacts. But nonetheless, you need to have the CRM, which just documents what you've done with this prospect, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you do heavy research. You don't want to do heavy research and not document it and then do an outreach and then next week get to do heavy research again because you forgot. Like just do all your research, do a touch point. The next week, your research will be condensed to a smaller window because you did a lot of research. Make your next touch point, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the biggest thing, is having that CRM as the hub where you just basically document what you have done and will do. Set your next task, right? So if I sent a piece of direct mail this week, well, I want to set a task for next week to send something with context about my direct mail the previous week. Right. It's really simple. I mean, you can break sales down and get super complex. We could talk about sales engagement tools like Apollo.io or Lemlist or all these tools, and I'm happy to go down there, or maybe we do a different segment on that another time. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just being able to commit to a certain amount of touch points on a certain amount of prospects with high value on a regular basis, consistency.
You mentioned it, commitment, consistency, organization, going deeper with a much smaller list of dream clients or dream prospects, rather than going really wide and not very deep and almost like the shotgun approach. Yeah. I think that the reason I like that is I think what you just described will be manageable for a lot of solopreneurs, freelancers, agency owners, and consultants out there who a lot of them are still heading up sales in their organizations, and their time is precious and limited. And I mean, the reason they're probably inconsistent to begin with is they don't have a plan they're working from, and they have so many other things competing for their attention.
Right. But exactly.
So how long after a first appointment do you follow up?
Yeah. Can I give you one tip for a first time appointment that if you aren't already doing this, this will drastically improve how many people ghost you, and it'll drastically improve how many people convert. Cool with that?
Yes.
So very simple. Very simple. And this is so elementary. And for some of you, you're already doing it, and it's like, oh, no duh. Right. But for some of you who aren't doing this, this is one of the more simple things that I train this with every salesperson, every company I work with, and I've worked with hundreds of agencies, and a lot of people still don't do this until I teach them the importance of this. And it's basically book the call on the call, right? So it's finishing every step of your process where you engage with your prospect by clarifying what the next step will be and confirming it and booking it on the calendar so that it's already set in stone. Very simple.
So smart. I mean, it's like you've got a captive audience.
You're already building momentum is one of the more powerful forces in all of nature. It's definitely one of the most powerful forces in sales. And so you want to make sure that you are maintaining momentum. Oftentimes people lose momentum. They have a great first time. I pull them in. We're hitting it off. I hit on some pain points, blah, blah, blah. And then we end the call. And then we email and say, hey, John, I wanted to get back on your calendar. Crickets. 2 days later, hey John,
We've all been there.
just circling back, trying to get something on the calendar. Momentum is dropping every time, every minute that we don't have that on the calendar. So instead of saying, hey John, let's get something on the calendar in an email or LinkedIn or whatever, and you got to play cat and mouse and chase them down, because guess what? Just like everyone's trying to get their attention for the first time appointment, priorities are trying to get their attention to stack rank the priorities in their life. And so if you aren't, one, staying top of mind, and two, confirming the next step, you are going to quickly find yourself competing against other priorities, and you may not be as important as you were a couple of days ago.
You're also, it's like you're giving the glow time to fade. And as you're talking, I was thinking, oftentimes the biggest threat to winning a new project, closing a new deal, is not, a competitor swoops in and captures that deal or that project before you. It's just easier for the client to make no decision.
100%. Yeah. And so I'll give you the framework for how we do it. So you finish the call, it's super good. Maybe your next step is a proposal meeting or something like that. Or maybe you're going to put a proposal together between now and then, and you want to deliver it on that date. Also, another tip, don't ever send a proposal over. Always deliver a proposal either virtually or in person. So you can ask questions, answer questions, get a feel for how they're going through it together. So deliver your proposals. Anyway, so let's say hypothetically meeting one goes super well. In theory, want to move forward. And then your next stage of your sales process is to do a proposal meeting or something like that. What I would do is say, hey, Austin, so next step, as we talked about, is I want my team to kind of do a deep dive into your business, do a little bit of a diagnosis of kind of your current state. And then we're going to put together a proposal of how we think we can get you to the next level, which I think you would agree with is the best next step. Am I right? Yes. Right. So they say yes. Okay, great. Well, I've got to open my calendar right now. I want to make sure that we prioritize this. Do you by chance have your calendar near you? Yes. Great. Well, hey, I've got Thursday at 9 a.m. or Thursday at 3 p.m. So morning and evening there available. Do either of those times work for you? That's in Eastern Standard Time. 9 a.m. works for you? Great. Well, I'm actually sending over the invite right now. Can you just let me know that hit your inbox so that we can make sure we get it locked in? You got it? Great. Confirm that. Awesome. Hey, Austin, I look forward to delivering the proposal to you Thursday at 9 o'clock. I will see you then. If you have any questions in the meantime, you know where to find me. Right? End the call, but I've already got the hook in for the next call. It's on the calendar. If they're going to not show up, one, they're going to not honor an obligation.
Mm-hmm.
Two, if they're not going to show up but they want to cancel with you, they have to go through an extra hoop to then cancel something that's locked in on their calendar currently. And three, they have clarity of what the next step is. You are driving the sales process, not them.
It saves them time too.
Yes.
It saves both of you the back and forth, like, let's go ahead and knock it out right now. And
I always use the phrase, I want to prioritize
work. Right.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
You're setting the tone. You're driving the ship.
Well, and you actually, one of my later questions is like, what are creative ways that you follow up? And I still think we should cover that. But what I hear you saying is, well, you cut down on a lot of the effort that you have to put into follow up.
Yeah.
If you book the next appointment.
Well, and now your follow up is a lot of recap. Right. And so what I do is I make sure before the end of the day, part of my daily shutdowns routine, as well as part of any sales rep that I train's daily shutdown routine, is make sure you tie up the loose ends and you send a recap email to any sales calls you had today. So very simple, it's a template in your CRM. Like you can use Pipedrive, you can use HubSpot, whatever. They all have a template feature usually. And so have a generic template that you can customize before you send it, but it's going to save you a lot of time. And so it's pretty simple. Like ours is, hey, Austin, really enjoyed the call today and looking forward to our commitment call on Thursday at 9 a.m. Via Zoom. You already have that invite in your inbox. Just a couple things I want to leave you with in the meantime. And then next step, something I heard from the call, where we're going to take this ideally. Also, here's a few resources if the context works. Here's a blog that's something that you mentioned in the call, or here's a a recording of this thing that we did. If you have any questions in the meantime, great. To find me, you can just respond to this, or if I don't hear from you, I will at least see you Thursday at 9 a.m. Look forward to it. All right. Very simple recap. Let them know the next steps. Let them know that you heard them on the call. Give them some stuff to think about, and just reconfirm that thing which you've already confirmed on the calendar.
Makes so much sense. It's a simplified, streamlined process.
Mm-hmm.
I even like the fact that you call it a commitment call, because that pre-frames the purpose of the call. We're not showing up here without an agenda. We know why we're here. And so after that call, they're still waffling, still making up their minds. How often will you re-engage before you just say, you know what, I just need to take them off the list?
Yeah, that's a great question. As it relates to like touch points, my general rule of thumb is if they are in my ideal market, I want clarity on yes or no. So what that means is I will never stop, quote unquote, doing a touch point. However, what it also means is I will spread out my touch points. Right? So instead of hitting them up every few days and then few weeks, it then becomes months and quarters, right? Because people buying windows change, priorities change, things of that nature. Unless they say go away, or I have no interest in this at all, or thanks but no thanks, I've already got somebody and I'm really, really happy, right? Even then, I still put them in the queue for 6 months down the road. Hey, hope you're still happy with your guy. Just put my name out there in case whatever, right? So my rule of thumb there is if someone goes dark on me, or if someone never responds to me, I will continue to put them through my process. I will just spread out the touch points in time. So I'm a big fan of trying to get, if you're doing sales, right, sales outreach, and you have not got the first time appointment yet, so this is not a lead that is in your pipeline just yet, I like to commit to 12 touch points before I start to really spread it out, right?
12.
Statistically speaking, you will not get a response, or you will, statistically speaking, the average touch points, it takes between 6 and 12 to get someone to a buying decision.
So juxtapose what you just told me with something I heard, which may still be true or not, but in Zig Ziglar's sales training course, he said statistically most people give up before 5.
Yes.
I heard you say, based on your experience, sometimes just to get the first appointment takes between 6 and 12.
Sometimes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes some people are going to convert on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if you look at like 100 people you go after, and you look at the people who convert, like it could take 6, 7, 8, 10 touch points before you really get some traction. And sometimes that number is a little skewed, because sometimes people use that metric for like it takes 13 touch points to get a deal done, which is different than getting a first time appointment. So like there's just all to say, consistency and making sure that you're staying top of mind is the takeaway here. And so go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, and that's why you need a tool, because I can barely remember what I did 6 months ago, let alone who I spoke with.
100%. Yeah, I think it's, and again, not to bring up my methodology, but the stacking methodology really helps. So I'll give a very high level breakdown of stacking. So stacking methodology is a way to categorize prospects and leads based on where they're at in the sales process. So oftentimes people run their sales process out of their visual pipeline in their CRM. So like take Pipedrive, for example, you've got a CRM with stages of like first time appointment, follow-up, second meeting, proposal, closing, contract, whatever. People tend to want to run their entire process out of that visual pipeline. I don't like something to hit my pipeline until it's meeting time, until they're on my calendar. So, but I want to make sure that it's not just like this blurry list of people and then a pipeline, right? So I want to have some sort of, right? Because you might have 1,000 people who haven't converted yet, or 100 people, and you might have like your 10 deals you're working in your pipeline. Well, there's no structure to your list of 100 or 1,000. And so what I like to do is stacking methodology. So the rule of thumb here is every prospect will always exist in a stack until they are a client, right? So there's 5 stacks. The first one is what we call stack 1. It is uncontacted researching, right? So stack 1 means that I have not yet contacted this person. So I either need to initiate a contact or I'm researching them. One of the two, but they have not been touched yet. Stack 2 is contacted, not engaged, right? So that might mean I've done my power hour, I've done a touch point with them, they haven't responded yet, but I have done a touch point. I have contacted them in some way, shape, or form. So step 1, uncontacted researching, or stack 1. Stack 2, contacted, not engaged. Stack 3, priority, engaged, not scheduled. Meaning they're engaged with me. Maybe they asked a question to one of my outreaches. Maybe they came in through an inbound lead, but they're not yet scheduled on my calendar. They're not a meeting yet. So those are people that I'm going to prioritize as a priority engaged, right? They're the closest to the money so far out of the 3 stacks we've talked about. And I'm the biggest proponent of stay closest to the things that are closest to the money and work yourself backwards. Stack 4, very simple, scheduled, right? They're on your calendar. You have not yet met with them, but they are on your calendar. Stack 5 is pipeline. So that is the only time that I will let someone enter my pipeline is if they hit stack 5. So and I don't let someone hit stack 5 until they're scheduled and confirmed on my calendar. And there are activities associated with each stack. So I know that if someone's in stack 1, I haven't contacted them or I'm researching. So the activities there are, I either need to do more research and gain more context, or I need to initiate the first contact. So I need to do the strategy there and then make the first contact. The moment I make that contact, I move into stack 2. Stack 2, contacted, not engaged. That means I need to either do the follow-up step, do follow-up research, create the next touch point, create a task for my next touch point with them. Okay. The moment they become engaged, I move them to stack 3. Okay. They respond to one of my emails. They responded on LinkedIn, but they're not on my calendar yet. Or I sent them my calendar link and they haven't yet scheduled. They're stack 3. Maybe if you get real fancy and you've got like marketing automation, you're seeing that they visited your website 3 times or they opened your email 4 times if you have email tracking. That's a priority engaged prospect, but they're not scheduled. Then you finally get that confirmation email. It's on the calendar. You move them to stack 4. Stack 4 activities are things like send a confirmation email prior to your meeting, right? People don't do this. They just like show up. They don't confirm if someone's going to show up. They don't send anything to help them. They're just kind of like, hey, we're going to walk into the room together and figure out our conversation.
Guilty.
Yeah, most people are, right? And that's super common. But that is stack 4 activities. And then stack 5 is basically anything that relates to your pipeline. And again, always start with close to the money. So if your last stage before a deal is closed is contract and payment, do I need to send any contracts? Do I need to get payment? Do I need to follow up with someone who has those things and has not yet sent them back to me? If your thing's proposal, maybe it's I need to create a proposal. Maybe it's closing actions of, hey, I need to follow up on someone who I already delivered a proposal to. Whatever, right? So those are your stack 5 activities. And so that way, and people can go down, right? So if someone gets in your pipeline, a deal gets going, and they ghost you, or they say it's not a good time, but they didn't say go away forever, then I just send them back down to stack 2, right? Contacted, not engaged. They're not engaged anymore. And I set my activity for 3 months from now, set my activity for 6 months from now. Whatever I believe my next step is, they're not engaged, but they are contacted. So what is my next step for them? And then I will just go to my task list every day. And if there's something that I set 6 months ago, well, I know to do it today.
It makes so much sense to work with stacks or like discrete stages instead of, what did you call it? Like a big fuzzy list or
I call it a blurry list.
I think it's what you said about focus on the activities that are closest to the money, or stay closest to the activities that are closest to the money.
And then work
that
back.
Makes sense. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so now I know how to prioritize my time. It doesn't make sense for me to put in some touches over here in stack two.
Yep.
If I've got a freaking proposal I need to turn around today, and yet I think it's sometimes hard to choose because everybody's all in one big bucket.
Yeah. And here's one thing I want to be very clear, and people can take that the wrong way. So yes, I always, so my day starts with stack 5, and then I do all my stack 5s. Then it's stack 4. I do all my stack 4s, stack 3, stack 2, stack 1, right? But one thing I don't want that to give people an excuse to say, oh, I'm stuck up here closest to the money, and I just never do sales again, outreach, right? So people can get so stuck up there or justify their lack of time in stack 1 and 2 or 3 because they're so focused on 5 and 4. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, that you can never get down there in stacks 1, 2, and 3 because you're focused on 4 and 5, but your revenue and goals aren't being hit still, that means you're not doing a good job with your time. Right. And so you need to, either you're making excuses for yourself or you're just doing a poor job of managing your time. And so I'm a big fan of blocking, batching your calendar, right? Mm-hmm. I want to have on my calendar stack 5 time, right? And I know that all I'm doing in this time is stack 5. Right. And I always have backup things, right? If I finish my stack 5, then I move to stack 4, or this is a time when I can do X, Y, and Z. And then I have stack 4 on there, stack 3 on there, stack 2, stack 1. Have them all on your calendar so that they're commitments for you to say, I'm going to spend my time here. And obviously things are going to happen and things are going to get backlogged and that kind of stuff, but always prioritize how I'll kind of hit all 5 stacks, prioritizing 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 in that order. But nonetheless, it's a powerful way of just never letting anyone ever fall through the cracks.
I agree. And I'm sitting here diagnosing some of the mistakes that I have made in the past. And I think part of it comes down to terminology. Mm-hmm. We use a word like pipeline.
Yep.
And it's easy to use that word and ignore the fact that, yeah, there are different stacks or different stages. They have different priority, different importance. Make sure you're taking care of the most important tasks closest to the money first, work your way backward from there, and always be putting more leads in the pipeline based on your dream clients, based on that list that you mentioned.
Yep.
It's easy to see how everything that you've described kind of fits together in this elegant system as opposed to what I have done, and I know a lot of agency owners, creatives, and consultants do, which is, oh, I need some money. Let me go flail around publicly, right? And maybe if I bump into enough trees, some fruit will fall down, right? It's I'm exaggerating, but can you tell me one story? You don't have to name names or deal values, but tell me one story or 2 stories about when follow-up paid off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say it happens on if not a monthly, a quarterly basis where I have a deal that I've been engaged or courting this prospect for, and mind you, my deals are high 5, if not into the 6 figures. And so they can be longer sales cycles. Sometimes they're a couple call closes, but they're, few and far between. Some of you got to work for 2, 3, 4 months. But then there's some of those deals. Like I just closed one recently. They're about a $6 million digital agency called Propellant Media, and I had been courting Justin for 3 years.
Wow!
And even though he's never done business with me, I've developed a rapport with him and trust with him, and it just wasn't the right time. They were kind of on a rocket ship, and I knew eventually, based on some of the decisions they had made, and I love it, like super sharp. I mean, they drive like 700 leads a month inbound. So they're doing something right. But I knew that what they were doing, they were eventually going to hit a plateau. And it was going to be somewhere in their sales process, and it was going to be somewhere related to salespeople. And so now my offers have somewhat shifted over the years, but nonetheless, I still solve a pain point in the same vein. And that time came, and I stay on top of them. I text them probably once a quarter. Give them a call, send them a voice memo, shoot them an email with the video, just let them know I'm thinking about them, send them a resource that was helpful, right? And this isn't a bunch of labor for me. I mean, it was me setting an activity after, just like I set the meeting while I'm on a meeting, when I finish a task, I set my next one, even if it's 3 months away.
That's
And
good.
then I just know that in my task section in a CRM, and my salespeople know that in a task section in their CRM, that task will one day show up so long as you check it every day. And so when it shows up, it's like, oh, I'm just hit up Justin today. Cool. It said to send value content. Great. Send text. Great. Right. And so 3 years later,
In top of mind every quarter.
3 years later, I just made 120 grand. Right. But it took time and it took persistence, and it wasn't this like grind of repeatedly hitting him up every 3 days for 3 years, but it was a lot of engagement at first, and then it got spread out a little bit, and then it got really spread out to quarterly. I would never let it go more than 6 months, but even then I would say quarterly is probably sufficient. 3 months is a lot of time for a buying window to change, or a problem to be more agitated.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they've solved the problem and said, hey, we actually solved the problem. I don't need you. And then you could take them out because they don't need you.
So I'm struck by what you said, because you walk that line between, hey, sales is transactional, money does change hands, but it's very relational. I kept in touch for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think what can help people walk that line is something that I see in you, which is conviction.
Yep.
Like you truly believe that you can solve painful, expensive problems for your clients.
Yep.
Otherwise, you would give up a lot sooner. And I think the reason some people give up a lot sooner in the sales process, or maybe I wonder if the reason they do, is perhaps because they lack conviction.
Yeah.
If it's not quick and easy, then I'm going to bounce on to the next opportunity, hoping that it will be quicker and easier. Right.
That's right. And so like there's a fine balance between conviction to solve a problem and someone wanting to be helped, right? Like there's an obvious, like, I don't need your help, even though you know you can help them. And so, well, like I can't help someone who doesn't want help. And so like there is that component, but overall, people do lack conviction in what they do, or they allow their insecurities to get in the way of you acting out that conviction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the weight of being insecure about rejection and or persistence and or they're not responding to my stuff, so they must not be interested, or they don't like me, or I'm doing it wrong.
And all that insecurity kicks in. Right?
Yeah, and then it's like, I'm not doing it right. I don't want to do this. This is labor intensive. It's rejection, blah, blah, blah.
Why am I even alive?
Yeah, like you start getting despair mode, and you allow the weight of your insecurities to overshadow, and the scales get tipped to where you now no longer, you're paying more attention to the insecurity you have than the conviction of the problem that you can solve for this individual.
Mm-hmm. And
I think it's important to understand, keep both of those in check. Keep your conviction in check. So if you're not convicted about your problem you solve, then what the hell are you doing in business? So make sure you keep that in check, but simultaneously realize that like you are your biggest obstacle and enemy. You have your own self-limiting beliefs of what you can accomplish, and you have to keep that in check. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself slipping more and more and more.
So good. Okay, I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you.
Of course.
Can we do 2 rapid fire questions?
Yes, let's do it.
I'll tell you both of them up front. Number 1 is just rattle off some creative ways that you have followed up.
Okay.
And number 2 is any closing thoughts, gems of wisdom you'd like to leave with people.
Yeah, so there's tons of creative ways. I mean, there's some of the stuff I'm mentioning, which is pretty standard, even though some of you don't think about it, but like texting, voice memos, shooting a video, and if you have their number, right, shoot a video and shooting a text. I landed one of my mastermind members. He's a $15 million agency. I landed him because he thought it was cool that I had him on my podcast, and then later on sent him a video of me in front of one of his clients' products, right?
Oh, genius.
You know, like that was cool. Like my biggest advice, I'm going to answer both questions in one. The biggest thing you can do in follow-up is be creative, be thoughtful, be valuable, and be different, and do the things that don't scale. Right? It's okay to not. We obsess over this scalability. I want to scale my business. I'm blah, 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 right? Like we get obsessed with it. do the things that don't scale, and it will enable you to charge and be viewed in such a way that you can charge a lot more money, which makes scale somewhat irrelevant. There's two ways to scale. Either become more profitable by charging more money for the same service, doing more or doing equal to or less work for more money, or scale through people, right? Like that's the two ways you really scale.
Yeah.
And I prefer the former, which is I'm going to do things that don't scale, but are so much more valuable, which means I can charge more money, which means my margins are bigger. And
which
so
means
I think
you can afford to do non-scalable things.
Yeah. And so it depends on like, understand your numbers too. So if you understand what you can pay, or if your average ticket's $25,000 and your margin is, let's just say 30%, right? Then you know that on $25,000, you're going to make, what's the numbers? That's like $8,500. Yeah. So you're going to make that. And so, can I spend $750 to make $7,500 in profit, or $750 to make $25,000 in top line, right? You have to know those numbers. And so if the answer is yes, right, then you can start putting a little bit more expense behind how you get in front of these high value people, right? My average thing is $80,000, right? Some are six figures, some go down to 60,000, but average is about $80,000. I am elated if I only spend $3,000 to land an $80,000 project, right? I rarely have to spend that, but I'm fine. I'm super cool if I spent $3,000 to land that deal, because the margin's there, the numbers are there. So know your numbers. With that said, the more margin you're allowed, the more you're allowing yourself for cost per acquisition, the more creative you can get, right? I actually did this for a client a long time ago to help them land their dream client. They're an SEO firm that charges like $40,000 a month retainers, and which is massive. So average deal is like $500,000, and they work only with elite personal injury attorneys. And what they do, or what we did with them, was we researched who this particular person was that he had touched at some point at a conference or something. And he knew his name, but it was kind of like vague. And what we did is we created a campaign around something that was really important to that prospect. And we found out this guy collects vintage lunchboxes, like Peanuts lunchboxes, Garfield, like just all the old school vintage lunchboxes. And we did, again, research. We found a YouTube video from like 3 years ago of him in his house, and he was showing off his collection or whatever. And our team screenshotted the wall as he was showing it off and looked at what he had and looked at what he didn't have.
What is he missing?
What is he missing? What's important to him? We know this is important. I mean, so much so that a millionaire is willing to get on YouTube and show off his collection. So we went on eBay and we bidded up this super rare Peanuts lunchbox, Charlie Brown, that had a thermos in it. So it was the full set, lunchbox and thermos. It was like $800, I think, when it was all said and done. We bid it on. And what we did was, this is super clever. So I pat ourselves on the back here. You don't have to be this elaborate. I'm just giving you an example of something creative. We sent him the lunchbox in the mail, a priority mail that he had to sign for. So we knew he got it. Just like email tracking, you knew he got this package. He had to sign for it. Open the lunchbox with the letter in it saying, hey, and they happen to be in the same city too, St. Louis. Said, hey, love to take you out for barbecue. This is, Chris. We did this, and this back in the day. The guy said yes, right? Had a great lunch. Went fantastic. We kept the thermos.
No, you had like leverage. It was like a bounty.
He went dark for about a month after that meeting. Even though it was a great meeting. Chris did what he was supposed to do. He set the next meeting, but he had to cancel, and then it went dark. And so what we did was we sent him an email with the picture of the thermos and said, oh, by the way, I forgot to give you this. Thermos. We forgot to give you the other half of this. Why don't we get together like we planned on, and I'll make sure I bring this with me. Boom. $500,000 deal happened like 3 months later.
So $800 for a vintage Peanuts lunchbox.
Yeah. Even if you want to account for time investment and the gifts and all those things, All in, he probably spent 3 or 4 grand in time and resources to land $500,000. I'll take those numbers all day long.
Well, and it's a great place to end. I think it's really hard to run the process that you just so generously described if you have a fixed scarcity mindset, because you're not going to be investing in these relationships. You're not going to be generous. You're going to try to spend as little time and as little money as you can to extract as much value for yourself as you can. And I think if we were to switch our mindset to more of a growth or abundance mindset, we'd have more fun with this stuff because we would come up with these ideas, right?
It's fun. You're being a human being. Sales doesn't have to be this Grant Cardone, Wolf of Wall Street, bang on the phones. Your prospects either buy or die. Like, that's not how sales needs to be. This is 2021, the time of recording this. Right? Like, sales is a transaction between two people based on trust. How do you build trust? It's not necessarily by banging on the phones all day long in a cubicle farm. It's by being a human being. We all charge expensive rates. And if you don't charge expensive rates and you're in the marketing consulting space, you should charge expensive rates. So let's start there. That's might be your first self-limiting belief, is you don't understand money and you don't believe that you're valuable and worth it. So that's where you should start. If you're not there yet, if you get there and you do charge something expensive, then like, you have the margin to make this work. And it doesn't have, we in this world don't need to get, this is why, and we'll end on this too, but this, we can go all day long. You and I usually do, but this is why I think that our space, it's the lowest barrier to entry with the highest potential upside, right? You need a laptop to get into the marketing space, right? That's it. And we can charge a lot of money to do it. And so that means we don't need that many deals, right? Let's just say hypothetically, this is legit. If my average deal is $80,000, let's round up to $100,000. How many of those do I need a month to be a millionaire myself? Not many. 1.2 million if I land one a month. One a month would be sad for me, but let's just say I land 3 and our margins are 40%, right? So it's 300,000, 40%. We're at $120,000 margin. Daddy's a millionaire because I closed 3 deals. How much effort and money am I willing to spend and time to close those 3 deals per month? 36 deals per year, right? We're not a software company where we charge $49 a month and we have to have transaction after transaction every minute of every hour of every day, right? Do the things that don't scale to make sure that you can increase your conversion rates, charge what you're worth, and you'll have the life you want to have.
What a great place to end. Where can people find you online and harass you endlessly with follow-up questions? Just kidding. Don't do that. But where can people find you online?
Yeah. So if you are, whether you're under 7 figures or you're above 7 figures, I have something I can work with either of you. Go to salesdrivenagency.com. What we do is we help agencies and consultants and freelancers with sales. Go to book a call and fill out the short application form there, and then we'll be in touch. You might get pushed to something that Austin and I have actually are joint venturing on, which is Double Your Agency Accelerator. Super powerful. Teach you how to double your agency through sales. Or if you're a little bit larger agency, you might be able to come work with my consulting firm. But salesdrivenagency.com. And if you just want to network and hang out and see my content, go to linkedin.com/in/Joey Gilkey.
Thank you, Joey. A pleasure. I really appreciate your generosity, and I look forward to the next conversation.
Likewise. Cheers.